Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to another webinar with the Riverwood Conservancy. Tonight's presentation is Photographic Journey Through Ontario Parks with Jason George. My name is Stephanie Keeler. I am the Community Program Coordinator at the Riverwood Conservancy. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I want to say a special thanks to Credit Valley Conservation for supporting the community programs that we do as well. And before we get started with the presentation, I just want to mention to check out our December programs at the riverwoodconservancy.org/events. There you can register for in-person and virtual programs. Tomorrow at 8 a.m. we have a virtual forest bathing program, and then tomorrow evening we have a few more spots available for our nature trivia night, which is always a lot of fun. And if you were looking for something in person, on Thursday, we have 2 winter wildlife walks, including hand feeding birds and also hot chocolate to follow inside the barns. So that should be a lot of fun if you want to bring your family out as well. And if you have the capacity to support our programs and protect Riverwood's wildlife, please consider donating. Right now, thanks to the generosity of Scots Canada, all donations to our holiday gift guide made before December 31st, 2021 will be matched dollar for dollar up to $15,000. That means your gift will have double the impact. You can find out more at the riverwoodconservancy.org/double. There you can purchase gifts that mean a little bit more than material items for the holiday season for your friends and families as well. And before we get to our presentation, the Riverwood Conservancy would like to acknowledge that the land on which we operate is the territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional homeland of the Anishinaabe, Wendat, and Haudenosaunee nations. This territory is covered by the Upper Canada Treaties and is within the lands protected by the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Agreement. Today, this place is still home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people, and we are so grateful to have the opportunity to live and work on this land. And tonight, we have Jason George back with us again, who is a wildlife photographer and presenter who retired from teaching to pursue his passion for wildlife. He has traveled to every continent except Antarctica, having some epic experiences along the way. Jason now uses his passion for wildlife to inspire future generations to help animals as he shares his work. Jason has presented to school groups, Girl Guides, special needs groups, and to groups in his parents' home country, Jamaica, about his passion for wildlife. He leads private tours and presentations for all abilities. His solo exhibition, Many Faces of Algonquin Park, is currently on display at the Algonquin Visitor Center in Algonquin Park until April 27th, 2022. So I have to go and check that out soon. So if you have any questions for Jason this evening, you can post them in the chat bar and we will get to them at the end of the presentation, unless Jason asks some questions throughout the presentation, and you may want to bring those up yourself, Jason. But that is all for me. That's a whole lot of talking for such a short period of time. Jason, I will hand it over to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having me. I look forward to it. I'm just going to set up my screen and make sure everything's going. Oh, that's not the picture it's supposed to be. Do you see my backpack? Like me with my backpack? Okay, yep. Awesome. So we're going to start here, and we're thank you everybody for joining. We're going to take a little adventure through Ontario parks. Some of them will be close to you. Some of them might not be that close to you, depending on where you live. But I've tried to take some from all over. And this picture here was actually taken in the Toronto area. So what my plan is for today's talk is you're going to learn a little bit about my journey. And then we're going to take a journey with my photos through the Ontario parks. And I'm going to share with you never shared before photos. We're also going to talk about animal safety. And then we're going to end with like a safari hunt, which is an eye training activity that a lot of people seem to enjoy. And don't worry, it's not just going to be the same pictures if you were watching the last presentation I did on black and white wildlife. So here you can actually see 3 owls. The one that's alone is a barred owl, the one winking is a saw-whet owl, and then the one jumping is a snowy owl. So when we last met, I was talking about black and white wildlife, and I had a gallery that was opening up. And that show went really well. And here's a little picture of the display that I had. As Steph mentioned, I do actually have a show that's going on at the Algonquin Park Visitor Center. And if you're in the area, I'd love if you stopped by and checked it out. I do have a little logbook or guest book, I guess you can say, where I'd love if you left a little message saying what you thought of it and where you're from. But I'll give you a little sneak peek of the gallery. So I've got a lot of pictures in there, and I tried to capture as many animals and faces of the park as I could. So this is the biggest gallery I've ever done. Here's an example of the largest private gallery that I actually know of, outside of like my own and also my parents. But this lady owns 3 pictures of mine, and they're actually in BC. And thank you, Miss Bodner, for purchasing these. Well, actually, her son bought them for her. So I have my own little gallery and presentation room that I built, and that's where I display most of my pictures, and I give tours out of here. Sometimes I'm not able to maybe do a tour out of my room or out of this room, so I'll actually take some of my stuff to go and see people. And depending on what's going on, we'll actually do like a virtual presentation so that we can make the most of the day. So in this one presentation I did, we actually did a virtual thing, and then we went to Algonquin Park and we left super early so that we could enjoy as much time as we could. They asked me to bring some cards for them to potentially purchase while we were on one of our snack breaks. The coolest part about this tour wasn't the moose that we saw, but it was actually these 2 bikers that were in a group of 4 that lived in Collingwood. And they actually recognized me, and they paid me a compliment that they liked my pictures. It was honestly, it was a really cool experience for me. When I'm not on tours, sometimes I hang out at farmers markets and I bring my stuffed animal with me. This guy's name is Bones, and he likes to hang out. And he'll take a picture with you. The best part about him is you can tell him your deepest, darkest secrets, and he won't tell anybody. Right? People will actually have started to bring their own stuffed animals to take pictures with him. Bones has actually become pretty popular, and I love to bring him to farmers markets. Sometimes it's actually really awesome when a former student stops by. This one actually ended up buying a print from me. That was a pretty special day in Creemore. So maybe you'll see me around at a farmer's market and can check out some of my pictures in person, or maybe you might get to read about me in the newspaper. So I was actually a special guest at the Innisfil Farmers Market, and they actually interviewed me and quoted me there. When I'm not doing farmers markets, I like to do presentations similar to today's. Sometimes it's a walk in a talk. Sometimes it's a birthday party. Other times it's just a presentation from a distance for those in an Alzheimer's society or whatever. And I always make this joke that if you have a presentation, if you need a presentation, I can do it on anything. And one time this guy called me out on it, and he's like, well, can you do one on dyslexia? And I was like, you know what? I'm dyslexic. I can talk about my life and my journey. And he was like, oh, that would be awesome. And I talked about how I battled and dealt with dyslexia and how it sort of has brought me to wildlife photography and how it was pulling me away from maybe doing a lot of written work. The funny part about that is I now actually have a column in a paper. So every edition, I'm going to have my story in the paper. That's kind of crazy that I wanted to get away from doing all of this written work, and now I'm writing columns for papers. Can never tell where life's going to take you. A lot of us are always worried about how people are going to judge us. And you know what? I totally get that. And a lot of people have been like, Jay, you should enter this contest. You should enter that contest. And honestly, I really don't enjoy entering contests. But I recently was like, you know what? I'm going to enter a contest. And here you can see 2 judges' comments. And again, I get that everyone's going to think different things of pictures and stories and all of that. But there's a 10-point difference in that. That seems a little bit odd that they were using the same criteria. And you know what? I could have beaten myself up, but at the same time I entered this contest, I actually submitted the same photo or I just shared it in a Facebook group called Moose Lovers. 13,000 people out of like 23,000 people at the time liked or loved or made some kind of emoji to that picture. So that kind of made me think that judge number 2 didn't know what he was talking about, or she. But again, everyone's allowed to think what they want. I also actually submitted that picture to a magazine. So in January, the edition or the paper, the magazine Our Canada will be releasing a story that I submitted. I know that this picture will be used, but I wonder what they think about this picture, which I also submitted. It's going to be interesting to see if they agree with maybe judge number 1 or judge number 2. But honestly, enough about me. Let's journey through some of Ontario's wildlife. But first, before we do that, type in what your favorite animal is. Or if you don't want to type it in, just think about it. And I'm going to do my best to show you a picture of your favorite animal. And I know that I won't get everybody's, but I'm going to do my best. So, are we ready? So, don't worry, I'm not going to show a spider because I know that that's going to maybe creep some people out. So I'm just going to show a web. Next is the praying mantis. And don't worry, we're going to slowly get bigger and bigger. Here is a creature that maybe some of you as kids probably played with. And maybe you've watched him. You know what this animal is doing? Hanging out in the seaweeds in the middle of winter. It was a warm day. And these guys came out to find food. So this next picture is a frog. But it's actually to maybe warn you that the picture that's going to follow it is maybe a little bit creepy for some people. It's actually going to be a snake. And the crazy thing about this picture is that I was driving along and all of a sudden I saw this frog jump out of the grass. And behind this frog, there was a snake. And the snake actually captured it. I slammed on the brakes, got out, and I watched this snake pull it into the bush. Eventually, the frog jumped away. But look at all of the animals that we can see if you just go out and enjoy the parks. Sometimes you will see sad things. Sometimes you'll see things that make you happy. It's all about the cycle of life, unfortunately. Here, unfortunately, I'm assuming it's a turtle's nest that was recently laid, and I have a feeling that some critter came and actually ripped apart all of the turtle eggs and ate the babies. This happened along the side of the road, and it was honestly, I saw 50 nests this day. Don't worry, there are a lot of turtles that are out there. And sometimes if you get lucky, you'll see a small one. This one, if I'm not mistaken, is maybe a day old, and it's a snapping turtle. This one was actually seen in my backyard. But the oldest and biggest one, and maybe one of my favorite pictures of a snapping turtle, was actually taken in the Riverwood area. Look at how old and wrinkly this almost prehistoric animal is. And one of the things, if you're using, or if you're really into wildlife photography, one thing that you want to work on is making sure that the eye is in focus, right? If the rest of the picture is blurry, that's okay. But how many times have you actually paid attention to the turtles? They're so much fun, right? The turtles are so slow. It makes for a great photo. As long as you don't get too close, you can take some pretty awesome pictures. And turtles can actually be quite silly. So this one, if I'm not mistaken, is a painted turtle. You can actually see a bunch of flies actually chasing and playing around on the back foot. If you're lucky enough, you might live close to a river. And that means that maybe you go out at the right time of year, which is normally fall, and you can see the salmon swimming upstream. These are some beautiful, large creatures that swim up and they'll hang out in these pools. All of those large black spots or brown spots moving, those are all salmon heading upstream to spawn. They'll hang out in these pools of water until the water gets high enough so that they can jump the dams. They'll try when the water's a little bit low, and if they're lucky, they might get up. Maybe they get stuck.
Oh, he tried close, almost got there.
As you can see in that video. Some of you are probably nature lovers and maybe don't just want to go for a walk along the water's edge, but maybe you have the opportunity to go for a kayak. So some of the birds that you might see from a kayak, you can also see them from shore, don't worry, but you can get a better perspective of some of these birds, is a bird like this, the great egret. What's odd to me is that this bird is white, stands out, but it doesn't seem to get attacked by other animals. This must mean he's really strong. Compare this bird to this next bird. The green heron blends in super well. The problem with birds is they can actually be very hard to photograph. One of the hardest birds for me to photograph is the kingfisher. Until recently, I never had the opportunity to get a really good picture of a kingfisher until this past spring. Many of us might not, again, I know that not all of you might be able to get out on the water, so you probably are going to spend more time in the forest. So the forest is an amazing spot. It doesn't matter what forest you actually go in, because there's always going to be activity. Most of us don't pay attention to the holes in the trees. But in springtime, fall time, pay attention to these holes, because you never know what's going to actually pop out of one of those holes. I unfortunately didn't get to see the babies, but it was because I was walking these trails and paying attention to these holes and the sounds of the different birds that I actually noticed as very rare and endangered birds. Have any of you seen the red-headed woodpecker? And no, I don't mean a woodpecker with the red head. There's actually, this is the red-headed woodpecker. There's a red-bellied woodpecker, there's a hairy woodpecker, there's a downy, but this one's endangered. I actually was really lucky. I got to see and spend a lot of time with not only one, but two red-headed woodpeckers. I tried to go back when there were babies, but I wasn't lucky enough to get that opportunity. Some of you maybe have spent some time on the beach. Maybe it's Sauble, maybe you've even come to my hometown of Wasaga, and you've noticed that in the springtime, they actually rope off part of the area. Well, the reason they rope off part of this area is to protect this little bird. This little bird will potentially get eaten by a seagull unless mom and dad fly in. That bird is, honestly, it's a little bit bigger than a golf ball. Here, take a look. There's mom, there's a baby, and there's another baby. These piping plovers, they take up maybe like a room on the beach. Give them some space. Just observe them from afar. They might even run up to you, but just enjoy them. Don't trample through their territory. That's one of the things that annoys me sometimes, is when people at the beach are trying to photograph these birds and you'll see them trampling through their territory trying to get pictures. They're birds, they're animals, they're going to move around. These birds are endangered also, so they actually have to be tracked and taken care of, right? If you look here, you'll actually notice that this one has some bands. That's how they actually are able to track and know which bird is who. I forget which name the name of this bird, but this one was seen in Wasaga Beach. And it's not just the piping plovers that get banned. The gray jays or the Canada jay, they get banned too. This one is up in Algonquin Park. And their colors and their bands are going to tell you which one is which. Here's a picture of a tree. Why would I show you a picture of a tree? It's because many people think that this animal that has a nest in the tree isn't a Canadian animal. They'll normally refer to it as an American animal. So hold on, it might be a little bit tough to see. So here it is in the fall time. Do you know what animal this is? Take a guess. If you want, you can write it down or just think about it. I'll give you a second. Well, did you get it right? Did you guess? The bald eagle. You can see the one with the white head is a mature adult. I'm assuming it's a female. And then the one beside it is a juvenile. I'm not sure what gender it is. But honestly, I got to see this in my in a park close by, and it was an amazing experience. And I was telling my one buddy, oh man, I got to see this eagle. And he's like, oh, I've got eagles in my area. And I was like, okay. So I got in my kayak and went to go see him. And he's like, and I put my kayak down and I'm like, so when am I going to get to see this bald eagle? The bald eagle legitimately landed on the tree on the other side of the bank or on the other side of the river. And I was like, are you kidding me? And we had a great day. We saw another bald eagle and we're laughing. And I was talking to him and I was like, I really want to go and see the nest. And he's like, okay. So we go to the nest, which they didn't want to go and see. And I was like, honestly, I want this picture for some presentations I'm doing. And as we're sitting there floating around laughing, we hear this giant splash. And I'm not even joking. We see this giant black bear swim across the river. And I looked at them and I was like, guess it was a good thing we came to see the nest. And it was honestly, it was such a surreal moment watching this bear swim maybe half a football field away from me. I wish it was a little bit closer, but I don't know if that was the safest thing, right? A black bear is a very large bear. It can be very skittish. We need to be careful when we're out in wildlife because we never know what animals we might see. We actually thought that this bear in the water was a muskrat at first, but it's definitely a little bit cooler and bigger than a muskrat. Does anybody know what this animal is? This back in the day used to be used to make a coat. It's a mink. It's in the weasel family. So we're going to take a look at some of these small critters that maybe some of us haven't noticed. This one is in a lot of the water parks, or any park that has a stream, you might be able to see it. And what's awesome is if you pay attention to the animals, they might actually tell you something. So one time I was kayaking with a bunch of ladies up in Wasegan. We hear this squeaking and squealing, and this blue heron is there, and we're wondering what's going on. And we just sort of sat back and watched. And what occurred was maybe one of the coolest things I'd ever seen, because I'd actually never at this point experienced seeing this animal so close. And the chirp that this animal was making was amazing. And they spent probably 45 minutes hanging out and protecting their babies from this blue heron. I don't think the blue heron got any of the babies, but it was such an awesome experience getting to witness and see these creatures protect and communicate to each other. It's awesome what you can actually see if you just sit there and enjoy wildlife. You do have to be careful, and we will talk about animal safety in a little bit. But this is one of the coolest experiences I've had in recent time. Let's stick with this kind of critter. Do you know what this animal is? I didn't know what I didn't even know this animal existed until maybe 3-4 years ago. Maybe a little bit longer than that. It's a pine marten. These animals are absolutely gorgeous. They have very sharp teeth, and you need to be careful. Another animal that has a sharp tooth is a beaver. This beaver and I had a very interesting experience. This one was eating a tree, and I didn't realize how quickly a beaver could eat through a tree. This thing's just chewing through, and it's taking what spot it wants, and I'm moving around trying to get all these pictures. And I'm not even joking, he ends up dropping the tree, and I end up having to run away from it as it hits my hair. Maybe I wasn't very careful in this situation, and I didn't realize that what the beaver was trying to do. I was in his way. I'm glad that he didn't actually hit me with the tree, and it was only the branches that brushed off me. But it's a pretty funny experience, and it's actually recorded on my YouTube channel if you want to see it. Another funny story I'm going to share is a little interaction I had with this fox. We all probably see them no matter what park we go in. Maybe you see them even on your street. This fox, I'd seen him running with a bagel, and I didn't know where he was going. And then he vanished, and I couldn't find him, and I looked for him for like 5-10 minutes, and he was gone. And then I went to go to the bathroom, and that is when I saw the fox again. Most people tell me he's laughing at me, but he's actually just yawning. But it was a pretty funny experience. I love having these fun experiences with the foxes that you see. You never know when they'll show up. This past summer, I was actually driving to a cottage, and we made a wrong turn. And it ended up being the best wrong turn ever, because we ended up finding this family of baby foxes. They were sitting there right by the road. It was awesome. And that's the best part about the parks we have in Ontario, is sometimes they're off on the little side of the road. Sometimes they're buried in the bush. They don't have to be the giant provincial parks. All the parks that we have in Ontario can be entertaining and have some awesome wildlife. This is a awesome little fox that was actually hanging out with us, and then Mom came home. There's 5 foxes that mom's got to take care of. 5 baby kids. Oh, that's got to be a tough one.
He just like pose for you.
I'm taking videos.
Look at how beautiful these foxes are. And again, most people probably think that, wow, that's a beautiful red fox. And honestly, it might be one of, it is a pretty beautiful red fox. But this next red fox is maybe my favorite red fox. Have you ever seen a red fox that looks like this? This is a melanistic red fox, often called a black fox or a silver fox. But she is the same as the other foxes. Just like people, all foxes are different. She's just has a few more dark hairs than red hairs. Her brothers and sisters look like the other red foxes. Her babies look like the other red foxes. It's awesome. Look at the colors on this one. A lot of my friends tease me and say that I always get these pictures of animals with their tongues out. You know what? I have a feeling they might be correct. Sometimes I get some pretty funny pictures. Here's one of my favorite, one of the funniest pictures is this unicorn. Okay, I'm lying. It's not a unicorn. It's just a deer. But I think it's the closest you'll get to seeing a unicorn. What about a funny picture of a moose? It's just a great angle. I was sitting in Algonquin Park recently and I was watching this one male moose. And then it started calling out and this other male moose was calling back. And they ended up walking out. And they walked behind this tree and they started talking or they gave a kiss and then they went off together. It was an interesting interaction. I wonder if they were friends or were they brothers? I'm not really sure, but it was just a cool moment to get to witness. This summer, I was in Algonquin and I got to catch one of the animals that I've always wanted to see. And honestly, when I first saw it, I actually thought it was sick and injured. It looks a little bit thin to me. And so I got out of the car and I was taking pictures and I was trying to make sure that it was okay. In this video, you might be able to understand why I might think something was up. It just wasn't moving right. There was something that was up with it. So I ended up getting out and I started taking some pictures and it was honestly a magical experience. I got to watch an Algonquin wolf for maybe 30, 45 minutes as it came in and out of the bush trying to find food. And then we left the wolf as it ran away and we came back and we actually ended up finding the wolf again. And everyone had parked in one spot and I parked in a different spot. I parked a little bit down the road and I was like, this is where I want to be. I want this angle. And the problem is with the angle I wanted, the wolf ended up coming running towards me. Not at me, but towards me. And honestly, I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I was a little bit scared. But I knew if I ran, his apex predator instincts might kick in. So I just stood there. It's actually videotaped. And I know that unfortunately I put myself in a situation, but I think I made the right move on not running away from that situation. but I ended up posting this picture, and I was trying to figure out what was going on and if this wolf was actually sick or injured and what we could do to help. But that's when I found out some pretty cool information. And this is the awesome part about, I guess, social media, or one of these awesome parts is I shared some of these pictures and stories, and someone then shared this picture. This moose got hit 3 weeks earlier and had actually had a broken leg, and it ended up dying on the side of the road. And that's why this wolf was at the side of the road. But when I got there 3 weeks later, this wolf actually looked like this. Nature had taken it apart. I actually returned 3 days later to actually try to talk to my show my parents and hope maybe we might see the wolf again. We didn't see the wolf, but look at the difference 3 days makes. It's amazing what Mother Nature can do. I had tried to look to make sure that the wolf was okay, and I don't know if it was, and I wanted to help, but you could see in the way that it was running that something was up. Maybe it was injured just like this moose was. But he did put on a great show, and I did get a pretty cool picture of him with his tongue out. And when I went back with my parents, I actually got pretty lucky, and we found this huge marble moose. Have you ever seen a moose with a coloration like that on its antlers? Have you ever seen a moose? Moose are so majestic. I hope that one day you might get to see a moose if you've ever seen one. So let's talk about this animal safety, because we've already started hinting at it, right? One of the biggest things is roads. So many of us speed through parks and backcountry roads, even in the city. If we slowed down a little bit, a lot of animals would survive. If you see a turtle and you feel comfortable and you have something, help take it in the way that it's going. Don't bring it back to the side that it's on, because it's just going to try to cross the road again. Spring and fall, you're going to see more turtles on the road. Maybe you're that person who throws a bottle out the window. Well, that affects our wildlife too. Maybe you're the person who hangs out at the beach and you throw your beer can and you just leave it on the side of on the ground. Hey, maybe it's a pop can. Right? Even this baby piping plover, it's 3 days old. It's not even bigger than the bottom of the can. And he's confused by what it is. If you take it into the park, bring it out of the park. Another thing, poo bags. If your dog poops and you put it in a poo bag, take it to a garbage can, please. I don't want to see these poo bags hanging like ornaments in the forest. There's better ways or better places to put it. I'm sure we've all seen these. I don't have a pet. I shouldn't have to pick up your poo bag. Letting animals be. If you let animals be, they'll be a lot happier. And maybe you'll get to witness something really awesome. I was around Riverwood one day, and these 4 deer started fighting. It was a magical experience. They fought for 45 minutes. And then they just walked off. It was it was beautiful. I didn't do anything to interfere. They did their thing. I got some awesome pictures. They were happy. This is the only time I've ever seen it. If you let animals be, beautiful things will happen. Some people love to go and see owls and animals, and they'll break leaves to get good pictures. It's not worth it. That animal set is in that spot because it needs that camouflage to not get attacked. There's a few people out there that will go and try to get owl pictures. And their way of getting an owl picture is to release mice into the fields. These three people are definitely baiting a owl because the owl is to their right and their cameras aren't even set up looking at where the owl is. It's set on the prey that they've released into the bush. And I know that some people are like, but I want to get that cool picture. But it's not worth it. The owls are saying no. Wait for it to naturally happen. When it does naturally happen, it'll be so much more worth it. Yes, I take people on tours to see owls, but I let them see them naturally. We go to see moose and we try to find them naturally. If we get a picture, we get a picture. If we don't, it's just an awesome experience to be out in nature, right? Let them be. Again, a lot of people think it's not a big deal. Here's a sandhill crane that actually ends up being able to be picked up with ease by a lady who's been feeding it all summer, and it's not going back to its flock to migrate. So I actually have to come in and I have to help rescue this sandhill crane. I had to put it in a box and transport it to a field where it would hopefully fly away and hang out with its family, with its own kind. But unfortunately, it was so used to people feeding it that it was flying towards cars, and we then had to try to catch it. Right? You might think that you're helping it, unless you're going to provide that food for it all winter long and a safe space for it, it's going to end up dying, right? Luckily, we were able to catch it. Unfortunately, it now doesn't get to live its own wild life. Right? I know that I brought it up earlier with roads, but we need to be careful when we're in the parks. Here you can see that this car actually was pretty close to this wolf. I actually was in the middle of the road trying to wave people down, trying to make it so that they'd stop without hitting this wolf. Wildlife is out there, and we built our roads through their territory. We've got to be careful, right? Let's help them, and we can also enjoy them. And if you do see an animal, stop safely, pull off. If you're not able to do it safely, just keep going, let them be, right? If you are going to pull over, make sure that you're outside that white line. Right? You don't want to be putting yourself or others at risk, right? And it's probably best to stay in the car because a moment like this could turn bad at any point. Easier said than done for some people. Also, while you're in the park, be respectful of people, not just the animals. Give people space. Here's a guy who gave me no space. Every time I moved, he moved with me. I don't even know this guy, and he's standing right behind me. I would move to get a different angle and give myself space, and he would move with me. Eventually, I got frustrated and said something to him. This is actually the beaver that hit me with the tree. Can you see the beaver? There it is. So let's play a game. You're going to need to keep score for yourself. You get 1 point if you can find the animal, 1 point if you know the name. Are we ready? So, do you see the animal? There we go. It's an eastern screech owl. These guys can be in any hole in a tree. This is why we pay attention to the holes in the tree. Let's go. One more. This is a giant white bird. It is a great egret hiding amongst the bushes. I don't think they camouflage that well. What about you? Here's a different shorebird, a little bit bigger. Actually, about the same size, I should say, as a great egret. A blue heron. Good job. Here's a different angle of that same blue heron, just so that you can see a different angle. Depending on what angle you look at an animal, maybe it blends in a little bit better. What do we see in this picture? Most of you might see that white animal, right? That's the great egret. And we've got one more being the, great blue heron. Do we see the animal here? Oh, you only see the garbage that people have left, those empty beers. But in amongst it, 3-day-old piping plover. Okay, let's put a plover in a better, more natural setting. Do you see him now? Oh, and there's a bonus point if you find the flea. So this next one's going to be a little bit tough like this one. There's going to be multiple. Hopefully you see the two big Canada geese. What about the little goslings? What's crazy about this picture is there's 4 goslings. And there's 1 egg. There's still gosling in that egg, meaning that these goslings that we can see here are minutes old. I don't know what happened to that last gosling because he never came out while I was in the neighborhood. It would have been cool to see a gosling coming out of an egg. A little bit bigger of an animal. Yeah, that's right. There we go. That's a moose. Look at the stones. There we go. What is it? It's got a bunch of spines. It's a porcupine. No, there's no nest in this tree. Look closely. Let's zoom in on this. So those are a whole bunch of turkey vultures. They're actually all roosting within the trees and they're hanging out. Some of them are airing their feathers out and catching some heat. Right? It's pretty cool. So I know that some people out there like to find these a little bit tough. Is there anything in this picture? What is it? Oh, there's an eastern screech owl hiding in a hole. Okay, let's go for a different animal now. This animal is a large-ish Canadian animal. Do we see it? It's got big teeth. Yeah, that's right, it's a beaver. Here, I'll show you it from a different angle. Let's try looking for this animal from a distance now. It's going to be a little bit tough. Do you see it? Hold on, I'll zoom in a little bit. It's an eastern screech owl. But look at how well these animals camouflage. Huh. Let's look at it from some different angles. Let's see if you can see it from this angle. Look closely. Do you see it? And that's why we don't move trees and branches, because the one animal needs to camouflage to help it from another. This one wants to blend in to look like the tree. I think it does a pretty good job of it. With the seasons getting colder, many of us are looking potentially for snowy owls. The easiest place to find a snowy owl is on top of a light post. Do you see one? They're not always on a light post. Sometimes they're hiding in the grasses. So let's look back at that last picture. Do you see the snowy? Depending on how you look at an area, your perspective will change, right? There he is. If you look at it from a different perspective, he's well hidden. Can you see him in this picture? We've got one last snowy to try to find. I was driving about 80 kilometers an hour and I spotted this guy, or this girl, I should say. They're not always on a light post. Sometimes they're hidden amongst the bushes and the dead wood. You never know where you're going to see some of this awesome Canadian wildlife. And I hope that Ontario wildlife, well, Canadian too. But I hope that I've actually maybe inspired some of you to hopefully get out and enjoy Mother Nature and all the beautiful animals that we have. I thank you for listening, and I hope that you've enjoyed our time together. Did I show you your favorite animal? Maybe I at least hopefully showed you an animal that you like. Hey, maybe you learned something new. So on February 18th at 1 o'clock, I do have another thing that we will be talking more about owls. I promise it's a hoot. And then May 27th at 1 p.m., I'll be doing something with skulls, antlers, and my dinosaur footprint. It'll be pretty cool. And I know that, Steph, I'll come out of this presentation for a second. Because I know that you are, and maybe other people are, but I have somebody that you might want to meet.
Ooh, that's pretty exciting. Oh, wow.
So this is Sandy, and she is a snowy owl.
Wow.
And she's pretty awesome.
And where'd you get that, Jason?
So my friend actually found her and got paperwork and a permit to get her stuff, and he's actually lent it to me to share with people during presentations and talks and stuff, so that we can all learn and enjoy and see just how beautiful and an owl might be up close. I wish it was mine, but unfortunately I don't have one, but I know that you like owls, so I thought I would share that with you.
Maybe one day you'll have your own. And you know what? The second best thing to owning your own is having friends that have one as well. That's pretty cool. I don't know if I have any friends that would lend me a snowy owl.
Honestly, I have some awesome friends. Actually, I actually recently just did this fundraiser with, and we raised some money for this girl to get a robotic arm.
I saw that video on your social media
Herself.
pages. Yeah.
Yeah, we raised like $8,100 in 36 hours,
Wow.
which is pretty awesome. So there's some awesome people out there, whether they lend me owls or help a little girl to get an arm so that she can feed herself. There's some pretty sweet people out there.
That is awesome. You are doing very cool work, Jason. Thank you so much for that presentation. Thank you for sharing all of your stories with us and also sharing some tips on wildlife etiquette. I think a lot of people appreciated that in the chat and were giving their own tips and tricks for viewing wildlife and even photographing wildlife as well. So feel free to take a look through the chat bar as well if you haven't already to see some of those comments
I
too.
have definitely not taken a look at any.
No, I know you probably haven't. No.
being dyslexic, talking and reading, not always the best thing for me.
Right. I will say you asked if you showed any of the participants' favorite animals today, and you definitely did. I will just go through some of them. Wolf, fox, moose, owls, beaver, fox. Someone said a stellar jay after watching the Canada Jay presentation we did last
Recently
week, I
we did
believe.
one, right?
Yeah. So that's pretty exciting. Rabbit, deer, wolf, snowy owl, orangutan. That's kind of the outlier. You showed everything else but an orangutan.
But orangutan, I don't know if it lives in the wild. So unfortunately.
Maybe for the next one, you can show us an orangutan photo, Jason.
I've never seen an orangutan, but I'll throw a monkey or some
relative.
Yeah.
Sounds like a great idea. Some more comments and tips. Gloria said about people tossing food out of their windows to attract wildlife like fox, wolf, black bear, coyote, and then they hang around roadsides, which is something you touched on as well, which makes it so difficult for a lot of our wildlife.
Yeah, it's a shame that, and the problem is you might feed that animal, but the next person who comes along might not like that animal, and then if that animal comes too close to them, now there's an issue, and depending on the animal, they might end up actually having to put that animal down. Right.
Which is what we're seeing with coyotes now, right? People will be feeding coyotes because they like coyotes and they want to help them. But what happens is then people see coyotes in their neighborhood and they're scared of them. They're scared for their pets or their small children. And then that's when it's unfortunate for the coyotes as well. So that's another really great tip too.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of comments that people are just super excited about your presentation. I'll save the chat so that you can read through it afterwards, Jason, as well. But people are just amazed by some of the experiences you had. And one of the questions we actually received on Facebook is, do you go out every day looking for wildlife?
Do I go out every day looking for wildlife? Not at all. I wish I did. Honestly, I'm in the process of trying to get to that point. Wildlife photography doesn't always pay that much, but unless you are like making it, and right. I'm in the process of trying to get to that point. So I actually do, I do get out quite a bit, but I'm also really lucky when I go out, I feel, because I go, like I went out fishing one day and I had a baby deer walk up and sit down next to me. Like,
wow.
Like I went to the park with my parents. We showed up at the park at, I think, like 5 p.m. We saw 7 moose before, like, we left at 8. Like, don't get me wrong, I sometimes don't see anything, but I definitely have a little bit of luck, and I think it has to do with like the energy I maybe put off. And I honestly, like, I'll be driving with people and I'll be like, there's an owl, and they're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you don't see it, it's right. Like, and then we have to loop around. I'm like, don't you see it? They're like, but you were driving looking at me. I'm like, I know, but there's an owl right there. How do you not see it? And for some people, like I don't always understand how you didn't see it, but I think we all see differently.
Right.
And so, like, I might not be able to read at a distance, but I can see an animal at a distance. And I've had some friends that they hate driving with me because I see these animals and all of that. So, and yeah, sometimes it's luck, sometimes it's like a little bit of skill in knowing like the environment and knowing what you're looking for. But I love to get out as much as I can. I try to go out with my camera more often now that I have like a backpack that's small. So, but there's people offering to take me on a drive. I'm down. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I'm just. That is, but I saw someone. I love going for drives and also taking people on tours and do a little presentation. And I like. Some guy gave me a dinosaur footprint. I don't know him, but I talked to him for like an hour, and he's like, "You do presentations for kids? Like, here you go. Like, give me your address, and I'll send it to you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." Like, it has a crack in it, but it's still a dinosaur footprint.
That's awesome. And yeah, I was just going to comment in the chat now. Everyone's asking how they can meet or tour with you. I think there's a lot of people interested as well. And we, just so everybody knows too, we're hoping to have Jason on site. We do have webinars set up with him, but there seems to be a lot of interest. Jason, how can people reach out to you and get involved more, and then hopefully bring you to Riverwood at some point to do an event with us as well?
So, there was a person who just commented that was on a tour with me, actually.
Oh, that's great.
He's the one that went to Algonquin Park with me.
Oh, I see that now. Jason's tours are awesome. Very highly recommended. Look at that. Awesome.
I didn't know, I actually didn't know them before we went to Algonquin Park, and it was an amazing day. It was awesome.
That's great.
You can find me on my website. It's jasongeorgephotography.com, or my Instagram, it's jasongeorgephotography.com, or just Jason George Photography, actually. Or you can email me at jasongeorgephotography@gmail.com.
And I posted that in the chat bar too. So if you scroll up to the very top, Jason's website is in the chat bar too, if you want to get in touch with him too that way. Then there's some questions about your photos. Actually, there's one question that came in from Janet. Are your photos on canvas? And then another question that came in a little bit later. What medium do you use for your wildlife photos? Is it on metal?
So some of them are in canvas. I will also print to like a 5x7 like print. And actually, if you do happen to see me in the Christmas season and you say Merry Christmas and ask for a photo, I have them on me, and I give people a free photo 5x7 signed as a Christmas gift, because I love the Christmas season. Some of my photos are on canvas, but I've sort of moved away from it. I'm actually a big fan of this acrylic here. So yes, those are penguins, people. I know it's weird that they're in grass, but not everything you hear on TV is true. Penguins do actually live in non-snow countries. This is South Africa. Happy Feet might have misled you. I'm not saying that they don't live in snow, but they also live other places. I've swam with them in the Galapagos Islands.
Wow.
So they do live in other places than snow, but I really like this because it's super light and you can hang it really easy with just like a 3M hook on the back. I don't do it myself. I send it somewhere. I don't think that they print for someone just posted I don't think the company prints for other people. I actually really like it because I kind of go to like the back door and it makes me feel like it's kind of like shady. And I ring a doorbell and I give them the money, and then like, and then I give them a photo like card, and one's got money and one's got like a card as a thank you for the person walking it to the front door. And I know it's not shady, but it makes me feel like it's kind of like a shady deal. And like the girl laughs when I give her the envelope, and like sometimes she'll make a joke like, "Oh, this one's for me." I'm like, I don't care, you take it if you want, but they know I paid for it. Like, but it's just like funny and silly. I don't think that they do it for other people. But and I really like, I have to buy like a 4 foot by 8 foot sheet from them, which ends up being a big piece of print, and then they cut it up and send it to me, or I go and pick it up actually.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, some secrets you have to keep for yourself too, Jason. So you don't have to tell us everything. And Janet actually posted in the comments too. She said, I've used Poster Jack and they do a good job too. So there's a suggestion for others that are looking to print any photos out. There's another question that came in, and this is a question I've actually asked you in the past, Jason, is do you have any tips on finding snowy owls? Because I know you have found a lot in your time.
So I never found a snowy owl until like 5 years ago. And that's actually what brought me to was like the Wasaga Beach area. But honestly, it's about driving in the, like looking in a field, and you're looking for a snowball that has a head and moves. It's actually really tough. You can get really good at it, don't get me wrong, and you can find stuff. Once you start seeing them, you will start to notice them more. There were like 3 guys that came on a tour with me. They had never seen a snowy. We spotted 5 together.
Wow.
Now the one guy, all he does is post snowy owl photos in his neck of the woods. And I hate it because he's got amazing photos. I don't actually hate it. I love his photos, and like I've actually got him into like doing wildlife stuff, and it's now he's learned the tip on like, oh, that's what I'm looking for. Like that's like, it's sometimes it helps going out with someone who's seen them before, and like I went out with someone and they're like, and then it was an amazing experience, and we'll talk more about those kind of things in my like owl talk.
That's awesome. And there's a lot of Facebook groups that will make suggestions as well. The one thing I will say is that it always feels better when you find an owl yourself instead of going out somewhere where you know there is an owl. So like Jason said, searching farmland and driving back roads and things like that, and looking for it yourself, it just feels better.
Yeah, like look on light posts. Like that would be my, like, don't get me wrong, like go, like it's okay to go out with people, but I will also say don't post where you found your owl.
Right.
Only share that with people that you trust, because people will start baiting and flushing and hurting the habitat that the owl's in. And then like recently, I think a saw-whet owl just got attacked and died because people had moved the branches in front of where it was hiding.
Oh.
So, and I'm not even in Mississauga, and I've heard that story. So
right.
It happens, unfortunately. So sharing locations, you shouldn't really do unless you like trust people. I'll take people on a tour because that's an owl that's out in the wild, and it might be on a post. I don't guarantee anything,
Right.
but I'm teaching you how to be able to hopefully find it in the future and on your own, and build your appreciation of nature and wildlife. So, yeah.
That's awesome. I think there's one final question for you, Jason, and it's what kind of camera do you use?
Oh, I use a Canon camera. It is a TSI 7 or something, which is a crop sensor. And the reason I use a crop sensor as opposed to a full frame is a crop sensor will basically make it so that it gives you a little bit of a cheat zoom on your lens. So I shoot, and it's more important about your lens than your camera. I shoot normally with a 1:400. With me using a crop sensor, it's sort of like a 2 to 5 or 600. So it means that I can be over here, but seem like I'm in front of you. So that's where like having like, or I could, if I had money, I'd love to have one of those big honking lenses, but having one of those big honking lenses means that I have to carry that thing like someplace, and I'm a little lazy, so I don't know if I would take it. But if someone gave me one of those lenses, I would be like, oh, I would love to use it occasionally. But you need to find a lens that's useful for like you and your style. And for me, I always have the 1:4 on my camera. And yeah, it's more about, I feel, your lens than your actual body.
I agree actually on that. I think the lens is kind of what changed. Like I had a nice camera, I would say, for a long period of time, and I never used it until I got a new lens on it, which brought the image closer. And I felt like that just changed my want to get wildlife photos. I don't know if you agree with that, but it really is all about the lens. I really don't know if you need these super, super high-end cameras. I could be wrong though. I'm not a wildlife photographer.
Don't tell anyone, but my camera is not a super high-end camera. But I'm not gonna lie, like I also kind of want to have a second body, and I should maybe buy a second body and have backup batteries at least. But I think it's all about the lens, and anyone that I've actually like talked to, it's about the lens. And like, do you pick Canon or Nikon? My answer is you pick the camera that your buddy has so that you can borrow their lens. And if they've got Nikon, you buy Nikon so that you can share lenses. That's why I got Canon, because my photography boss at the time, he had Canon. And once you go one, it's sort of hard to go away from it.
Right.
So.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jason. Is there anything else you would like to say before we say goodbye for the evening?
If you're in Algonquin Park, check out my show or check out my website, and have a great one. Merry Christmas.
Awesome. I'm planning on going to Algonquin sometime, hopefully in January, to check out all your photographs in the visitor center. So I'm pretty excited about that.
And you're coming to see some owls with me too.
And seeing some owls with you as well. Absolutely. I can't say no to owls.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
so
so much.
I promise.
I believe you. Well, thank you so much, Jason. Again, everyone go and check out Jason's website and get in contact with him if you have any questions for him or would like to purchase photos as well. And we will see Jason next year for more programs and hopefully on-site programs as well. And I hope everybody has a great holiday. Thank you so much, Jason. Have a good evening, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.